Welcome to the Spring Stitch Sampler Knit Along. I'm so excited to be sharing 4 weeks of mosaic patterns with you. This is week 1. If you haven't seen it already, you can check out our Introduction to Mosaics videos below. Those will give you an overview of what mosaic knitting is, and you have a chance to work a couple of swatches before you dive into a big project like this. This week I'm going to show you how to knit pyramid stitch, which is the stitch you see right now. I'm going to work it row by row and show you how it's done, and then I'm going to go over what it looks like if you use the colors differently, so if you use a light color in place of a dark and vice versa. And then I'm going to go over the chart with you that's included in the written pattern and show you how to read that. This is a stitch that's worked in multiples of 14 plus 3 stitches. It's over 16 rows. If you have already cast on for this project using the written pattern, you'll see that maybe you didn't do the math. You're casting on 121, 147, or 200 stitches. And maybe you can see just from 147, that's not a multiple of 14 plus 3. So there are some additional border stitches on most sizes and for most of the stitch patterns, and that just ensures that this blanket's going to be the same width all the way down. I'll go over that when we get to the chart, but I didn't want the number to throw you. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is you're going to go ahead and cast on, so hopefully you've done that already. I'm only going to be working a swatch, so I'm going to use 17 stitches for my swatch, which is exactly what I need for 14 plus 3 to get one pyramid. So let me just get this out of the way. I have already started on my swatch. I used a knitted cast on, but you can use whatever cast on works for you, whatever you're comfortable with. And then I've also knit 2 rows. So you will find these in the written instructions to cast on, how many to cast on, and knit 2 rows. This is my color A. It is an easy yarn to find and an inexpensive yarn. It's Red Heart Super Saver, right? So ubiquitous, at least in the US. We can find this just about everywhere. And the color is aptly named white. So white is my color A for this project. I'm using 17 stitches for the swatch. And remember, I'm using garter stitch just like I did in the 2 practice swatches. So all you're going to do is knit and slip in this pattern. There's no purls. We have no increases, no decreases. It's just knits and slips, which makes it kind of fun. It makes it move fast. I really enjoy mosaic knitting, so this is just one of the benefits, I think, is how fast you can work it. So I've already knit my 2 rows with color A. These are my setup rows, okay? So this is what creates this border at the bottom that you see here, this white border, all right? So now I'm gonna switch colors. And the color that I am using, that I'm switching to, that I've used for the blanket, is called Monet. And this is it. I've lost the label. It's getting a little, it's getting a little thin. But it's also a Red Heart color, a Red Heart multi. And it is pretty easy to find as well. So inexpensive, easy to find. Hopefully this is, a project that you can complete relatively easily. But if you do want to change it up, you can change your yarns. Any worsted weight will do, and even if you don't pick a worsted weight, you're going to end up with a blanket that's a little different in terms of size, but it's a blanket, so it doesn't really matter, right? Okay, so I've knit my 2 rows, and now I'm using color B, all right, and I'm just going to let this fall and pick up my new yarn, make sure I'm not working with my tail, and get started. So I'm going to knit my 8 stitches, and remember, I'm working the swatch, so the repeats should be the same for whatever size that you're working, the part that's in between the asterisks or stars, but you may find that the numbers before and after those, so how many before I get to the first slip or how many I knit in the beginning, are a little off because I am working a standardized size. So knit 8, slip 1, and then it says knit 13, but I don't have 13, right? Because I'm only doing the 1 repeat. All right. and I did have one slip that row, okay? So the only stitch that I slipped is this guy right in the middle. And remember, anytime that we are slipping when we're on an odd row, which is the right side, we're slipping with our yarn in back. That means we can't see that color, and that's what makes that color A, which is white, pop. All right, on the way back, I got a lot of cords going on, guys. I got this cable, which is a little long for the swatch. I've got a microphone cord that you guys can't see, and then I've got some tails. There's a lot happening here. I'm gonna end up tangled by the end of the night. So I'm just gonna knit right back down the way I came. Here I go. And when I get to that stitch that I was gonna slip, I'm not gonna slip it with the yarn in back this time because I'm on the wrong side, which is an even row. Every even row, this is what you're gonna do. Slip it like this. And I sometimes catch it with my thumb. I think I showed you guys this in the last video. Sometimes I just kind of hold it because I tend to go a little too tight. So if you see me doing that, that's why. I don't want to mess up my tension. So for every even row, you don't even have to look at the pattern, right? Because you are just doing the exact same thing you did on the odd row. Let's tighten that guy up. You're doing the exact same thing you did on the odd row, except you're slipping with the yarn on the opposite side. All right, so we have worked row 1 with color B and row 2 of the pattern. So remember, every 2 rows, so down and back, you're going to change colors. So we're back to white. Sorry, just pulling my pattern up. Okay. Get all my cords straightened out. You know, I've also got 3 cats, and they're relatively new. My kids each, I have 3 kids and 3 cats. Each kid got a cat, which was a very interesting family decision. But they sometimes like to come for the yarn, as those of you with cats probably know. So I do have to be a little mindful of that as well. This is like their paradise right now. So row 3, we're knitting 2, and then we're slip 1, knit 1 twice, slip 1, knit 1 again, slip 1, knit 3, and then slip 1, knit 1, slip, whoops, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and then we're going to end with a knit at the end. One thing about mosaic knitting, you always have to start and end with your dominant color. You're never going to start a row or end a row with a slip, because that's just not going to work, because then you're carrying the yarn back across, you know, an empty stitch in order to get that to work. And you are never going to slip the color that you're working, right? So there's no reason for me to slip white if I am working white, because I can just knit it instead. So if you do catch yourself slipping that first stitch or last stitch, if you do catch yourself, you know, slipping the color that you're using, then that's a sign that something's up, and go back and recount. I don't know if you guys can hear these birds, but they are happy today. It's like the perfect, oops. It's like the perfect day to be recording for a spring stitch sampler, right? All right. Which way can I turn it to not tangle? Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, so far so good. Right? So next we're going to work row 5, and this stitch pattern is, and we're switching colors again, remember. I almost used my tail. And you're just, each time you switch colors, you're just carrying it up the side. You don't have to do anything different with that. You know, you don't have to tuck it or catch it or anything like that. Just carry it right up the side, and it'll make a pretty edge that nobody even notices, you know. The interesting thing about this pattern is that there are no repeats for this particular stitch pattern. So, you know, you're not going to see row 1 and row 5 are the same or anything like that. Which is kind of interesting because, oh, I think I'm reading the wrong row. No, I'm good. I'm good. Sorry, got to chatting. So I'm on row 5. Gonna highlight that on my pattern so I know where I am. Knit 7, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and we would keep knitting 11, but you know we don't have 11 because we're not doing multiple repeats, so we'll keep going to the end. But the interesting thing about this pattern is it does not have any row repeats. What I do like about it is it's got some nice long runs, like the one I just did, you know, some 13s and some 11s in there. And then the next row is very slippy, but you know, every other row you get a chance to just kind of knit. And as somebody who's learning mosaic knitting, sometimes that is really, you know, it's like a break. So on one row you're slip, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, you know, and then the next row you can just kind of take a breather, recenter yourself, do the thing that hopefully you're doing, you know, easily and that makes sense to you, and then repeat. So as we keep working, we're going to see that the longer rows of Monet, or this multicolor, are going to be replaced with long rows of white in the pattern. So we're always going to be working long rows of something. All right. So this is what it looks like so far. That was row 5, which started with a knit 7. And now I'm on row 7, which I'm working with color A. If you ever kind of get lost, just look at what color you're supposed to be working with, and that's kind of a clue. Am I knitting the right row or not? So this one, we're going to start with a knit 2. All right, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 7. Slip 1, knit 1, and we're going to end that with a knit, slip 1, knit 2. Okay, so if we look, we can kind of start to see this pattern emerge. All right, I'm going to show you what it looks like here. I know that's a close-up. So what we're starting to see, we're actually, this is the center of our swatch, so our swatch fits like this. So we're starting to see, we just worked this long line right here. We're starting to see this, vertical, inverted, vertical, pyramid, whichever way you want to refer to it. We're starting to see this emerge in the white. Our other pyramids, our standard pyramids, are still there, right? So these are the ones that look like traditional pyramids that are upright with pointy tops, but they are to the side, so we're really working half of each one. Okay. So this is one way you can also kind of check your progress. You know, you want to make sure your pyramids are lined up. If you are working and you notice as you come along that maybe your pyramid is one stitch off, that's, you know, a way that you know you've made an error there. And it is a little easier to see in this pattern than in others. Somebody did ask about how I slip my stitches. I think I've told you guys before that I'm a combination knitter. And so I spent, ooh, uh-oh. Sorry, we're having some camera issues. Yeah. I think I told you guys before that I am a combination knitter, so I end up reseating my stitches a lot of the time, just because my my purling results in a stitch that is facing the wrong way like this. So when I'm slipping and I'm slipping, you know, down one way and back the other, as long as you're not twisting your stitch, you don't have to slip the way I slip. Slip the way that works for you. I'm a big fan of you knitting in the way that's most comfortable for you and the way that makes the most sense for you. But that is why you'll see me slip one way and then slip back. I am just used to reseating the stitches, and I don't even notice that I do it most of the time. So there you go. Check that. Sorry, we got a little wonky when I lost some camera there. So, oh, okay, All right. Thank you for bearing with me through this little upset. There we go. Okay, so that should be pretty good for you guys. Sorry about that. I've got a new setup. Using feedback all the time to see what works best. I think I still need a gooseneck to really get the hand view without the little tripod feet, but I think this works a little better than last week where the angle you guys said was a little hard to see. And also hopefully you can hear me well because I did upgrade the mic at the recommendation of some folks from the last knit along. All right, so now we're in row 9. We're working with color B, which is correct, so we know we're in the right spot. All right, we're going to start off this one with a knit 5. Slip 1, knit 1 3 times. And then we are going to slip 1, knit 7, but of course we don't have 7 to end with because we're just working a swatch. So we're going to end with a 5, which is nice because we started with a 5 and we ended with a 5, and we know we're working a little swatch that is going to be symmetrical, so this is perfect. Okay, so I'm going to turn, try not to tangle. That is one thing, if you guys are old enough to remember phones with cords, which I am. We had phones with cords and cordless phones, so I am of the generation of cordless phones, but we still had some that were corded in our house. And I don't know if you remember, if you picked up the phone with that coily cord to the headset, whatever, the receiver, and you put it back and you didn't twist it you didn't twist it in the opposite way when you put it back on the cradle, then you would eventually end up with this like long coily kink in your phone cord, and you would have to like hold the cord and let it spin until the big old curl came out. Oh goodness. Anyway, my point is you kind of get the same thing going on if you're always turning the same way when you're working with 2 yarns, because you're twisting them the same way every time you flip your work. So you may want to stop every now and again and untwist, or just, make a mental note of flipping this way on the right side and this way on the wrong side, or you'll end up with a big old twisty in your 2 yarns. All right, so still we can see the pyramid emerging. The pattern is pretty apparent, so hopefully this is a pretty simple stitch to work. You will see that there are these little white dots throughout the multicolor, and then there are these multicolor dots throughout the white. That's because we're doing mosaic knitting, so we can't slip long rows, right? We can't just make all of this the same color, because we need somewhere to catch as we move along. So we will get to some multi-slips later in this project, but for now we're only ever slipping one at a time. So now let's tighten that up. So now I'm on row 11. I'm working with color A again. Knit 2, slip 1, knit 11. So this is remember when I said that we would do long runs of white eventually. That is what is happening now. It's a nice long run. Oh, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And yes, that's nice and centered. So I can see that that is in fact correct. And then slip 1, and we know we're gonna knit 2 because that's how we started. All right, looking good. Starting to see it. Not gonna lie, it is a little awkward to knit in front of the camera just because of how I have to position my hands over the table. I think it's like 6 inches out from how I would normally knit, right? You should be looking at my lap because I don't usually knit over a table. I don't think many of us do. Is that a hair? Yep, that's a hair. I think that was one of mine though, so can't blame the cats. Okay, so here we are. 12 rows done, right? 12 out of 16. So color B, whoops, clickety clack. So picking up our color B again, our Monet. Gonna knit 3, and then a slip 1, knit 1 5 times. So slip 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. And then we're going to end the same way we started. And you are welcome to work one of these swatches before you even get started if you are nervous about this particular pattern. Or you can just dive in. I know that, you know, when you cast on 200 stitches, it's serious, right? And you don't want a reason for a lifeline in that first row. So if you are a little nervous about it, that's fine. Go ahead and make yourself a swatch and just kind of work it and see what it looks like. And of course, if you get stuck, we do have a Facebook group, and I'm in there and some other knitters, so you can kind of see what yarn other people use for the projects. You can see you know, what they had a question about, if they had a question about something in the pattern. So sometimes, you know, before I can even get there, the question will be answered. There you go. Yeah, okay. So I'll put a link to that below so you guys can hop in there if you like as well. So for our last 2 rows, 15 and 16, we'll be using color A, which is the color we started with, right? So in this one is where we can see that it is completely inverted, right? So knit 1, slip 1, knit 13. And this is the top of our pyramid. Or the top of our inverted pyramid, I guess I should say. One thing about mosaic knitting is it is sometimes difficult to see the pattern if you're looking at it up close. So if you're like, I'm not quite sure if this is right or not, put it down and go across the room and look at it. I know that sounds silly, you know, but you guys can see in some of the pictures of the blanket that I've already posted that it's, you know, if you're close up, you're just kind of seeing too much detail, right? You can't see the forest for the trees. So if you actually just take a step back and look at it, that's why so many of the pictures of the blanket are from far away, because that's how you can kind of see that design pop. There used to be these posters that you could stare at, and if you like stared at them and crossed your eyes, or you like stared in one spot and backed up, or you know, whatever, like a 3D image would pop out. And it was weird and trippy and just like really cool. That's kind of what these are like, right? If you're too close, it's a bit of a mess, but as you back up, the pattern kind of pops and you can see it for what it is. Okay, so that's 15 and 16. I do want to say always remember to work 16 because I've put down the instructions. You know, for the odd rows, you're actually working them, and then for the even, you're coming back across. So 16 doesn't say row 16, here are your instructions. It just says for everything between 2 and 16, you know, you're going to do the same thing. So make sure you work 16 or it's really going to mess you up as you move into the next repeat or to the next section. Okay. So this is our swatch. This is exactly like the one that I've used in the photos and the examples, and just like the written instructions. I also worked up a swatch in blue and white because they're highly contrasting, just because I wanted you guys to be able to see the difference in these colors and what the pattern can look like depending on what you're using. So this particular pattern, the only thing that you're really looking at is which of your pyramids point up and which of your pyramids point down. In other patterns, you know, what pops will be a little different and look a little different, but this one, because it's so homogeneous, I mean, you're really just blues pointing up, whites pointing down, or blues pointing down and whites pointing up. So just so you know, the bottom one I did a white setup, and then I started working row 1 in blue. So if you're working row 1 in blue, you're going to get blue pyramids and white inverted pyramids. For this one, it was the opposite. So row 1 was in white. So this blue is a setup row, row 1 in white. So you're getting white pyramids and inverted blue pyramids. Easy peasy. If you're playing with colors, this can just kind of help you figure out, you know, what look you're going for with yours. All right, so next we're going to take a look at the chart. I know how some folks feel about charts. Okay, so the center box of stitches in the chart, that's the portion that repeats in the pattern. So when we talk about a pattern, when we say a pattern needs 14 plus 3 stitches, what we're saying is a multiple of 14 plus 3. What we're saying is 14 will work plus 3, so 17, or 28 will work plus 3, 31, right? So it's not a multiple of 17, it's 14 however many times, and then 3 little extra stitches. So those are dead center at any of the charts, and there are charts for different sizes, okay? The next set of boxes that you see, these are on either side, these are the edge stitches, and they are that plus 3. And the edge stitches are added for 2 reasons. One is to finish the last pyramid. So if you look at the top left of the center stitches, those that are the repeating stitches, the top left, we don't have the first / last stitch of the next pyramid, right? Because it repeats, we can just use the first one. The first stitch of the next pyramid will be the last stitch of this pyramid. However, when you finish your row, it's going to look a little wonky and uneven if your pyramid isn't finished. So this is just to round out the last one. The second reason that we add an edge stitch is because, as I said before, when you're knitting mosaic stitch, the first and last stitch have to be in that dominant color and you have to work them and not slip them. So adding the dominant color, 1 stitch on each end is what those other 2 stitches are for. So 1 to finish off the pyramid, 2 to round out the edges and make sure you're always working with the dominant color. So you will see that there are edge stitches in every mosaic knitting pattern, as well as I have included some more stitches, and those are in the double squared box, okay? The double squared box is the stitches I had to add to make sure that they were sized appropriately. So 14 plus 3 doesn't fit the same way, a multiple of 14 plus 3 doesn't fit the same way into 200 stitches that it does into 147. So you will find that different sizes have different numbers before and after the repeats, and this is why. So anything in the double box are stitches that are just for this knit along, okay? So to read the pattern, you're going to start on the right. You work the stitches in the double box once, work the first edge stitch box once, or boxes once. Then you repeat those center stitches over and over and over until the number you have left is the second edge box plus the double box on the left. Okay, and then you'll work through those once and you're done. As I mentioned, the double box stitches are going to vary. So for pyramid stitch, you know, when you're doing the small size, you'll work a multiple of 14 plus 3, but then 3 stitches on each side. It's going to be different for medium. You're going to have 2 and 2, and then large size is a little wonky. It's not quite even, so multiple of 14 plus 3, and then just 1 stitch is added. So sometimes you're going to come to an even stop. And that's nice. Sometimes there are none needed depending on the size, and you may see that in future weeks. But some, you know, some you'll see adding 3 stitches on either end. So you just gotta Just got to be able to roll with it and read either the pattern or the chart. I included this information so if you're planning on using this particular stitch pattern or any of the others in another project, you can do that and be sure and use your edge stitches, but you don't have to use the double box stitches. So if you're using these on your own, skip the double box stitches. And also, if you don't care for charts, don't use the chart. Just rely on the written instructions. You don't need to learn anything beyond your comfort level. We're just here for you to be able to learn this stitch in the easiest way, best way for you. Okay. That is it for week 1. I hope that you feel like you're getting the hang of mosaic knitting and that this helped. It's really helpful to me if you like this video because it helps other knitters find it and then they can join our knit along and have a wonderful time. If you would like, you can also subscribe. That way you're notified of any future videos, including the knit along videos and when they're posted. Which, spoiler alert, they sometimes go up a little bit earlier than the posts on the website because sometimes I get into little, not a little trouble, but I am unable to get them to publish properly, the post to publish properly with the video if the video is not published first. So sometimes they are posted a little early, so you can subscribe if you want notification of when those go live. And like I said, we do have a Facebook group and there's a link to that in the comments. Also in the comments, you're going to find the link to the written pattern. That includes a chart for this stitch and the written instructions. Also links to all the videos in the series so far and to the overview. You'll be able to find the yarn I use, the needles I'm using, and a link to my blog. So basically a ton of links. And hopefully I will see you all next week when we'll be doing the dotted wave stitch.